you, well, maybe, but why is Danish so important when you're looking for a job in Denmark? It might seem like an obvious question, but when you look at the fact that in Copenhagen, capital of Denmark, about 20% of the people living here are international. There are a lot of like huge Danish but global companies in Denmark. 14% of the population in Denmark are international. So there are great opportunities when you, even though you only speak English or English and your own native language. So you can, this is like the first thing I want to say before jumping into why it's actually a benefit to know Danish. But you can actually get a job without knowing Danish. However, it's going to help you if you do know Danish. So here are six reasons to actually know Danish or learn Danish when you're applying for jobs in Denmark. And we're going to start with that today there was a new yearly analysis, or this year's analysis of the Danish job market came out, posted by the company Bellisager. And they said that 78% of recruiters value that you know Danish and that language can be a barrier to get a job. So I'm not like, there are like thousands and thousands of jobs, right? But that means that 22%, it's not necessarily important to know Danish. So there are jobs, but it's just to say that it still helps you get more job opportunities if you know the language. And on that note, also that access, you by knowing the language, or at least like starting to know the language, like even before you move here, start to show that you are integrating and you want to be here. That's one of the signals. It's also showing that you start learning Danish, that you're like, hey, I really want to be here, because it's not necessarily a super easy language to learn, but it gives you access to a wider job market. We were talking about small to medium-sized companies, which there are a lot of, like a lot of in Denmark. Those you would have a better access to when you know the language, or at least like know a little bit of the language to start, right? Because a lot of the big companies, especially Denmark is known for pharma, for robotics, stuff like that, where it's very normal that the working language will be English. That's super good. But in the like smaller to medium-sized companies, you might actually have a huge benefit from knowing the language. Knowing Danish also will give you better networking opportunities. And if you don't know already, one of the super important things in job search in Denmark is also really to, oh, now I lost track. Oh yeah, networking, super important. Sorry, I read the comment and then I was like, what was I saying? They say, hi, thanks for answering my LinkedIn certification question. You're very welcome, Jay. Thank you for asking. We were talking about whether certifications were important for recruiters in Denmark. So thank you for asking that question. And I would say yes. So go you, and feel free whenever you finish the certification, let me know, tag me. I would love to see and congratulate you, of course, as well. But back to the topic of learning Danish. So the stronger networking opportunities is a super amazing thing as well, because both that while you learn Danish, the networking part is a great way to train part of your English if you make people aware of it. So most Danes know English, at least when you're, I would say, under 50, maybe even 55, something like that. Most Danes will know English. And a lot of us have a tendency, because it's easier when we see you struggling with Danish, we'll just switch to English. I always do, when I'm talking business, when I'm coaching and stuff, I always do that in English, because the information is too important to kind of get lost in translation. So that is why I do the coaching in English. But if you at a coffee meeting or networking, if you're like, hey, you know what, could we do like 10 minutes of the conversation in Danish, because I really want to train my language as well. That is amazing. And then as you get better, your networking opportunities will get better, because also some people are not necessarily super fond of speaking English. They understand it just fine, but they're maybe not used to speaking English in their everyday lives at work. So they wouldn't say yes to a coffee meeting with someone who only speaks English. So you get way stronger networking opportunities. Another thing when we're talking about learning Danish is that a lot of the company culture in Danish companies is also the small talk, like the relaxed kind of vibe of like going to grab a cup of coffee in the small breaks and have a bit of a chat by the coffee machine or the water cooler or whatever, the goldfish pond. I don't know if anyone has that, but having these small chats with colleagues. And again, if you have like 10 Danish colleagues, the most like natural thing for them to do is to do the small talk in Danish, right? So for you to kind of feel included and feel like this makes sense, then having the language is a huge benefit. Hi Linnea, nice to see you. So the company culture, and it's not that you can't be part of the company culture if you don't know the language, but it just becomes easier, right? And it's just like I know from um, when from a lot of the people I kind of work with, and saying that, well, if they're in a Danish or minority where the most people are Danes, then even though people are super sweet, when they come and join the conversation, they'll switch to English to include them. But sometimes it can still feel like it's a hassle, like that you as an international will feel like you're kind of a burden because they have to switch to English to include you. So you can actually help that by starting to learn the language even more yourself, and start to be included in those conversations as well. Can you have a shout out, please? Hi, Marcus, of course. Okay, so the next one is that also a very good idea is to think, even whether this is something I get a lot, that people are like, oh, I'm not going to learn Danish because I'm only here on a 2-year contract. So why would I even learn Danish? There's multiple reasons to do this, but one, if you figure out during those 2 years that you actually want to stay, then it helps a lot to actually know more Danish. And that means that your career opportunities will be better. So both in terms of like just applying for another job after that contract is out will be better, but also if you want to advance, and if you want to, I was talking to someone who worked at the university, right? And the thing is, if you want to kind of advance in a university setting, a lot of the, as soon as you get up to be like professor or manager or whatever these things are, a lot of the things are happening in Danish. So that means that if you don't learn the Danish language, it's going to be really hard for you to kind of advance in your career in that environment. So spending the time as soon as you get to the country, or even maybe before you get to the country, to start learning can be a really great help for you, both now but also career-wise moving forward. I have found that the trick to keep Danes from switching to English is to engage them in groups of 2 to 3. Interesting. That's amazing. And amazing, Marcus, that you're Danish, so am I. A little trick too, before I have one last tip here, that where it makes sense to learn Danish, or why it makes sense to learn Danish, but a trick to how to learn Danish, because again, it can be really hard. There is, of course, a lot of different apps out there that you can use. There's like Duolingo, there's Babbel, there's a lot of other apps. And I'm starting collaboration with someone, and as soon as I have more information on that, that's like really interesting AI-based language help, but I'll remember to share it when I have it. But a good way to also learn Danish is to go on Netflix or wherever streaming thing and find Danish TV shows and put English subtitles on there, or native subtitles if you're not English, then whatever your native language is, put the native language subtitles on there and then listen to the English from that, or listen to the Danish and read the English or the native language part from that. Another way to dive into learning Danish is also to learn it from a topic of interest. So let's say that you find Viking history super interesting, then start by reading about that and start at a level that is like fifth grade kind of level. Start with like children's books, because it's a good way to kind of get the basics of the language. So one, find a topic that interests you and then start at a lower level to kind of get the main words and the way that the sentence structures and stuff like that works. I am by no means a language teacher. That's so not me. But yeah, it's so hard for English people to say "rød med fløde." Yep, that can be a challenge for sure. You can get okay Danish practice from talking to ChatGPT. Yes, there are downsides, but it's a good place to start. I totally agree. And actually, the collaborator that I'm working to work with, not me, is actually working on creating something that's AI based, and it's kind of closing a gap that's like, and it's, yeah, I'm super excited for this, and I'll let you guys know when I have more. The best way to kind of keep track on that, if you're interested, is to go connect with me on LinkedIn if you're not already. I know that you are, but I promise, as soon as I have some more information within the next couple of weeks, I think I'm gonna share that with you guys on LinkedIn at least. Okay, so the last thing that is super valuable in terms of learning the language is just like everyday life. And yes, especially if you live in Copenhagen, you can get around, you can manage with just knowing English, but having the Danish language is just going to make things so much easier. I hear again and again the small thing like going grocery shopping or going to the doctor's office and stuff like that. It's just easier if you have at least some understanding of the Danish language. So I think that whether you want to stay for a longer period of time, or if you're just here for a smaller amount of time, learning Danish is a super, super good way to also integrate with other people when you are, especially also if you have kids, like showing up for hobbies, for football, for like handball, for like whatever, swimming, whatever kind of hobbies or things that your kids are attending, dancing lessons, whatever it might be. Knowing Danish so you more easily can understand the other parents, and so you can more easily understand what your kids are getting, the information they're getting from school and stuff, is a super nice reason to do so. Um, and yeah, just in general, whenever something happens, it's easier to navigate. If you need to, all of a sudden there's an emergency, you need to react to call 911, which is 112 in Denmark, so don't call 911, call 112. That, like, those kind of things, right? When you have the language, everything becomes a little bit easier. So I definitely very much encourage you guys to learn Danish if you want to apply for Danish jobs. Wow, it's really good today. Whether you're in Denmark yet or not, then I definitely encourage you to learn. So thank you so much for watching live today. Tomorrow we're going to talk about, and I need to see here. Oh yeah, tomorrow we're going to talk about transferable skills, which is really interesting because transferable skills is what I see a lot of people struggle with, in terms of if they are especially used to work in academia and are going into industry, then figuring out all the skills they have from their previous years and years and years in academia as a PhD or a postdoc or a professor, whatever it is, and figuring out how that works into the industry. So I'm going to give you some tips and ideas and frameworks and stuff like that tomorrow on how to navigate that. Oh, thank you, Marcus. But I also have other things I need to do. So yeah, that is going to be tomorrow. It is probably going to be tomorrow evening, because I have another meeting at the normal time. But on Thursday, I will be back at around 4 o'clock. But I will hopefully see you tomorrow. If you're watching the replay and have questions, feel free to write in the comments and I will do my very best to answer. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn and connect, and then have an amazing rest of your day. Bye.